I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristen Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years, and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised, we'd be cordial.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Joseph Yeager. Joseph, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I love the person that introduced you to me, and I know the time in which she did it. I was having an issue, but we'll bring that up a little bit later in the show. But our wonderful leader of FSP Against Bullying, she told me that you were the go-to guy when it comes to talking about things like cyber safety.
Well, Jazz is awesome, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about her. But yeah, she's great.
Absolutely. So how long have you been working with her and her organization?
I've been working with them for about 3 years, but this is my second year actually on their advisory board. So I'm one of the members that helps them in a certain specific area. In my case, it's about cyber safety, cyber security, that kind of issue. Mm-hmm. Anything related to cyberbullying, sextortion, cyber stalking, which is, I think, what we're talking about today, anything of that nature.
Right, right. Well, thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Tell our listeners a little bit about your organization and how you got started into doing this kind of work.
Well, I started getting into cyber safety, I guess it was about 6 years ago now at this point. And my young daughter, she was in first grade, and she had just come back from school, and they had a local author come to her first grade class and talk about a book that he had written. And she was very excited. She decided to come home and look it up online and try and find out more, because she heard it was a series of books. So as I recommend to anyone who has young children, she was not allowed to use a computer unless it was within eyesight of either myself or my wife. And so I was in the living room. She was in the dining room right next to me. And all of a sudden I looked over, and she had this really bizarre look on her face, and she wasn't moving. She wasn't talking. And I asked her what was wrong, and she didn't answer. And I said, "What's the matter?" And again, she didn't answer. And if you knew my daughter, you knew that's a problem right then and there. So I went over to her, and I said, "What's going on here? What's the matter?" And she just pointed to the screen. And I looked at the screen, and it was content that was deliberately put there for a young child to find. And it was offensive. It was some vulgar comments that were put there relating to the book series she was looking for. So it was deliberately put there for any child who was looking for the book series to find this. And it really startled her. And that's what got me involved in, what kids can see online and what happens online. And so that's what got me started in this by myself. And as a result of that, I created Safety Net of Pennsylvania, which is my company where I go around and work with community groups and schools and stuff like that.
What's interesting that you started this, it's like going down a rabbit hole. I mean, it seems never ending in terms of the information. So how did you get through sifting through, where to even begin?
Well, you're very right on that. It never ends. I mean, it's everywhere. I hate to say it, it doesn't go away. In fact, at one point I even got into a little online discussion with a guy on Twitter who said that I was completely wasting my time doing this because we're never going to do away with it. It'll always be with us. And I said, no. I said, maybe that is the case. I said, but it's still worth doing. I said, we can help people. We can protect people. And he said, doesn't matter. You're never getting rid of it. You should just stop doing what you're doing. And I said, no, if I can help even one person, I said, it's worth my time. And he said, no, that's not true.
Okay.
And I just politely told him that we apparently have a different value on one person's life, and we would just have to agree to disagree.
Right.
So skip ahead a couple of years, and there was a member, Dominique, who is a member of 50 Shades of Purple Against Bullying. She had been following me on Twitter. And she, at one point, I guess this was about 2 years ago, had invited me to come speak at their annual educational conference. That would have been 2017, I guess. And I just gave them a basic primer on social media and cyberbullying, which is something that they needed to know more about. And then the following year, they asked me to join as an advisory board member.
Okay. And then you get a can of worms from that too.
Oh yes, there's always a ton of it. Like I said, we may never get rid of it, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying.
Exactly. It's like, okay, so argument is ridiculous. We're never going to stop people from molesting children. I mean, that's true. There will always be some sick person out there that's going to do that. So the logic is that we should just stop talking about it and arresting people that do it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that was his philosophy.
Oh man. Yeah, it's always interesting. And I know when I reached out to Jazz, I was going through something where I had a stalker. He's known, I don't even want to give him that attention. He's known in a country in the world as that country's worst stalker, been in prison for doing such a thing, absolutely has, narcissistic personality disorder, is probably a psychopath. And for whatever reason, I actually reached out to me through a listener of my show that was posting things about my show. And I get it. I'm in the public arena, but it was really interesting to be a part of that for the limited time that I was. And that's when I had reached out to her, because it was certainly unpleasant. These people are, wow. We could do a whole show just on how disordered and malignant they are, I agree. Because I actually had somebody do something similar to me, actually. She came after me. I shouldn't say after me. She came to me and asked me to out somebody for being a cyberbully. Yeah.
And I said, look, that's not what I do. And I said, and I really don't know that this person is a cyberbully. I only have your word for it. And I've just met you. I don't really know you. And she was really upset with me that I would not go after this person and call them out. And when I refused, she started bad mouthing me anywhere and everywhere she could. I found out she was going on websites and telling people to come after me.
Wow.
And people were actually very supportive of me, which was great. And they said, I've seen what this guy does. He's not a problem here. If there's a problem, it's you. And then she blocked her Twitter account for like 2 weeks. And someone said, yeah, that's typical, because she just does this to anyone and everyone that doesn't agree with her.
Yeah.
And, sure enough, about 2 weeks later, it just died. But for 2 weeks, she was going anywhere and everywhere telling people that I was a bully and I was a fraud and I wasn't doing what I said I was doing. So.
Yeah, I got all that too. And I thought it was interesting. The tactic is an ongoing. I mean, I'm one of hundreds of people that are listed on his website as, that it's all set up to out cyber stalkers. Mm-hmm. So they quote unquote come after you for being a bully of them, for something where you don't even know who the hell they are. You certainly don't want to know who they are. And then when you respond and say, oh my gosh, I'm not bullying you, then they turn around and threaten you and try to, suck you into the game. And then they go to all these different places, even went so far as to call some of my clients at their professional offices and complain about me being a bully of them. It's you can see character disorder, running
absolutely
through this. So as adults, we have the length of time, most of us anyway, have the length of time and experience and people to go, okay, yeah, don't engage with this person. It's going to die down. If they're on a particular website, that I won't give them any advertising either. That website host will never take anything down. That's, because they're shady also. And so there's nothing, you can do unless you spend millions or thousands of dollars, and then it'll just show up. If you win that particular set, it'll show up on another one. So you literally have to be okay with just ignoring it and not engaging, because that's what they want you to do, is engage. And if you don't engage, they're going to find another target, sadly. But when you're a kid, you don't have the resources that we do as an adult, to even, the emotional resources and everything to deal with that kind of thing. There are laws that protect it, but a lot of people still don't know, who do I call? What do I do? So I'll stop rambling. And what do you think about that situation?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I guess this was about 2 years ago. I was actually, a woman came to my Facebook page and she sent me a message, and she said that while she lived overseas, she actually lived in South Africa. And she said that her daughter was being attacked online by someone that she had been conversing with, but the daughter was young, probably in grade school level. And she told this guy things that she probably shouldn't have told him. Like, she told him personal things like, I live in this town, I go to this school. And then all of a sudden he turned mean and he started stalking her and threatening her. And she said she went to the local police, and the local police said, we can't help you, go away. And I said, wow. I said, I understand maybe why they said that, which is because apparently what she was able to tell from his discussions with her daughter was that he was from Russia. And the South African local police said, we have no jurisdiction in Russia. There's nothing we can do about this. So she was really frantic because she was really scared, because her daughter said, this is my school. And he said, I'm coming to your school to get you. So after enough time that she couldn't get any help, she came to me and I said, here's what I would suggest you do. I said, maybe South African local police can't do anything about it. I said, if you tried, their version of the FBI, the American FBI. And she said, I went to national, federal, they said the same thing. And I said, okay. I said, then you go to Interpol. I said, you tell Interpol what's going on. I said, I know Interpol takes this very seriously, and they have jurisdiction in many areas around the country, around the world. And sure enough, about 2 months later, she came back to me and she thanked me, and she said that Interpol actually took care of it for her.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And she was very happy. She said apparently Interpol found the guy, and yes, he was from Russia. And he basically, they said Interpol promised he won't be an issue. She never really found out what they did to him or what happened to him, but she said he had stopped contacting her daughter, and that's really what she wanted.
Mm. Okay, and they did that on behalf of someone being underage. Do you think that they would have gone to those lengths if this was an adult?
To be honest, probably not. I don't. I know, actually, this past week, there's a social media app called Kick that just shut down. It was very popular with children. And because it's very popular with children, the predators go there as well.
Right.
Wherever the kids go, if that's what you're hunting, you're going to be there too. Right. And I have spoken with numerous officials, police officials, law enforcement officials here in the United States, both locally and around the United States, who have said when they try to go to Kick, no matter what the age is, Kick just says, we really don't care what you say. And they say, look, we'll come up with a warrant. And even though it was, in some cases, was with children, the Kick said, we are not going to help. And they said, well, we'll get a warrant. And they said, yeah, good luck serving an American warrant up here in Canada. We don't have to honor it. And that was even with children in some cases.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think that Interpol would have gone to those such lengths if it hadn't been, but I could be wrong.
That's what's, disturbing, is it's sad that you do have to get to a place where, regarding some things, not your kids, of course, but in relation to you, that you just have to let it go. And I say that knowing that there are people that I'm well aware of, and the public is well aware of them as well, that their faces are superimposed onto porn stars, and they're all over Pornhub.
We just had that happen here locally to our local news affiliate in Philadelphia, where yes, and she's having a real hard time getting it. And it's a shame because some of the comments that we're seeing online are basically people like, hey, you have to suck it up and live with it. That's what happens when you're a public persona.
Right. Wonder if they would be that unempathetic if it was happening to them.
Or someone they love.
Or someone they love. But the reality for my friends anyway, and some of the things I've had to deal with is that unless I spend, millions of dollars, and they have spent millions of dollars to get things removed, they do have to they just don't look. They don't, they stop shoveling money down that rabbit hole, and
You're right. And there's actually one of the larger companies that says they help people with this kind of situation. I think he's the CEO. And I don't remember his name right now, but I use it in some of my presentations. And he says, we can't remove stuff. They can go to Facebook, they can go to Instagram, they can go to Twitter and say, hey, this is what my client is experiencing. Can you remove it? But they can't force them to remove it.
Right.
So what they're saying is, since we can't remove it, we can ask nicely and hope that they'll work with us. They said what we try to do is we try to flood the internet with other content, right, so that the content you're objecting to just is off of page 1 from Google search results. And if it's off of page 1 from Google search results, it basically doesn't exist, as their philosophy.
Right.
So they can't get rid of it. They know they can't get rid of it. They tell their clients this. It's just, we'll put it down 3, 4, 5, 10 search results pages, and anyone looking for it will never find it. But it's still out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had a radio organization wanting me to, host a show for them, an AM FM radio, which I didn't want to do it anyway. But, they found some stuff out there way buried. It was on like page 30. And they brought it to me, and it was from a stalker, and said, what's the situation regarding this? And I sent in all the legal stuff, all the communications with police in different countries, blah, blah, blah. And it was all fine. They were, when I said, is this going to prevent me from, being able to do this show? And they said, are you kidding? Do you know the hosts that we have on our, the stuff that's out there about them? We just have to follow. They're like, yours is nothing compared to what theirs has been. And I'm like, oh, how sad, but thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that, as their philosophy of these companies is, let's get it off of page 1 of Google. But if you really want to hunt for it, if it's out there, or if you really believe it's out there, and you're willing to spend the time, you'll find it. I mean, look at what happened with Kevin Hart this year with the Oscars. Right. A tweet that he posted years ago, because somebody decided we need to vet this person. And when they vetted them, they found content they didn't like. It's out there. It can be found.
I know. And that's scary. It's especially scary. It's scary for our kids, but it's also scary for those of us that, when Facebook, as an example, first came out, and nobody knew, in the public anyway, what the heck it was and what it was going to end up becoming. And we just posted our, every thought out there. Not all of us, but some of us, did that. And then we went, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that. And even deleting those accounts, it's still there.
Yes. And here's a very important point that most people don't realize. When you post an image onto a social media site, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, any of them, the question that you hear is, well, who owns the rights to the picture? Well, you do. You took the picture. It's yours. However, every social media site out there that I know of, in their terms and conditions, says if you post it out there, you give basically free use rights for anybody who wants to use it. Mm-hmm. So there was a photographer up in New York City. His last name, I believe, is Prince. And what he would do is he would go on Instagram, and he would find provocative pictures of usually teenage girls. And he blew them up to poster size. And then he sold them in a New York art gallery for up to $90,000 a piece.
Wow.
And it went to the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, he's within his rights. You posted it on Instagram yourself on your account. And when you agreed to use Instagram, you agreed to the terms and conditions, one of which is people can do this to your pictures. If you don't like it, don't use Instagram.
Yeah, I know. There's a thing right now with Jennifer Lopez where she saw a photo that was taken by paparazzi of her with Alex Rodriguez walking around somewhere and liked the picture, then posted it to her Instagram, then took it down. And now the photographer is suing her for lost wages because her posting it on her account made it less valuable, which is part of his job. So it went to being like worth 25,000 instead of 150,000.
Yeah. There's a reason why many celebrities and wealthy people live in France, and that's because the privacy laws in France are much more restrictive, especially for the paparazzi. So they don't have the rights that they would in many other countries. But when you post it on social media, no matter where you post it from, you agree to those terms and conditions. So if you post a picture of, like, who was it right now? Suzanne Summers is actually taking heat this week in the media,
right?
Because in her 70s, she posted a picture of herself in a bathtub nude. And there are people coming down and criticizing her, saying that she should have more class than that.
Right.
So you put it out there, you have to realize that when you put something out there, you may have to deal with some repercussions that you didn't expect.
I think it's interesting too when we look at, I mean, because you're also a marketing professional. So when we look at things like there are specific celebrities like Suzanne Summers where just a lot of negative energy gets thrown her way for all kinds of reasons that I wouldn't know because I don't know this woman. And then there are other celebrities that, I mean, they can almost do no wrong, in the eyes of
look at the Kardashians.
Yeah. I mean, they get a lot of haterade too. Not that I'm a big fan, but it's interesting how that happens and what is the chicken or the egg in those situations. Is it to me, it's that making a meal out of someone in a negative way. If it's more of a moneymaker, then they're going to keep doing it regardless. And it's about the money. It's not about the celebrity.
I think there's some truth to that. Now, like I will tell you, like, part of it with Suzanne Summers may go back to when she was on the TV show Three's Company, and she took bad press from that show.
Right.
By the same token, I'm always seeing on Yahoo News, because for whatever reason, they always post these pictures of Elizabeth Hurley, who's in her 50s, and they show her, oh, look how good she looks in a bikini at 53. But yet no one would say anything bad about her, but she doesn't have that bad history, if you will, that maybe Suzanne Summers has. So that might be tainting it.
Right.
You know, it taints it at the source. So whatever Suzanne Summers says, maybe the public just doesn't want to see it or hear it. Or one person in the media said something about it. A couple years ago, Victoria's Secret came out with a new line. It was the geisha line. And it was really interesting because, and what happened was one blogger, who really was not a very well-known blogger, but one blogger posted something about it and saying that it was racist and it treated Asian women in a stereotypical way. And somebody else in the media picked up on it. And from that one blog, Victoria's Secret had to pull the entire line and say that they weren't going to do it. And that was about 7 or 8 years ago. I did actually hear a rumor recently that they're trying to bring it back, but I don't know that that's true.
Yeah, we've become hyper vigilant in good ways and not so good ways. It's going to be really interesting to keep riding through this to see what this looks like in a year from now, in 6 months from now, in 5 years from now. You know, it's going to be really fascinating to see if we can have some measure of success in terms of protecting ourselves and especially our kids.
Right. And the only way to do that is to be constantly vigilant as to what's out there. You know, perform what I call a virtual audit of yourself. And maybe you do that once a month, once a quarter, I don't know, twice a year. If you see something, then maybe you're doing it weekly, to try and catch things before they get blown out of proportion. Because if you can nix it before it gets blown out of proportion, then hopefully it won't cause problems down the road. But if you don't know about it, then obviously you can't do anything about it.
Right.
And then it can snowball. There
are companies, and what do you think about them, that you can pay $80 a month and their job is to go in and, you know, try to remove as much of your digital footprint as possible.
Well, they've said they can't remove stuff. What they can do is try and flood the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can bury it. But, if you don't have the time to do it yourself and you've got the money to do it, they will provide a service for you.
Mm-hmm.
If they can bury stuff before it gets seen, great. But people have to realize that they really can't remove stuff. Like I said, they can go to Facebook and say, hey, we just saw this. This is completely not true. This is not my client's account. It's a fake. Would you shut this down? You can try, and maybe the company, whoever it is, whatever social media site it is, might, but chances are they won't. They just don't have the time and resources to police themselves that well.
Right.
Unless they can prove that it's showing like child pornography or something along those lines, they really aren't going to get involved.
Right. And then, the times that I have lamented about my own experience with this, I had some young kid that's, oh my God, the problem that I didn't know about before I met him legally and so on. And then figured out, oh, okay, as I got involved with them, these are people that they're of this age. And so they're going to clip whatever they can of you. And I'm out there, with my show, I've got 8 years of content, and they can clip whatever the heck they want together. They do it to people all the time. And if they have a vendetta for whatever reason against you, and they have nothing but time on their hands, and they're character disordered, they're going to sit there and do it. And the only thing that works that I've seen is disengaging.
Yes. I will tell you, last year, just about a year ago, I was speaking at the International Bullying Prevention Association's International Conference in San Diego. And the keynote speaker for that was Monica Lewinsky.
Mm.
Now, and she was awesome. Everybody loved her. But the interesting thing was, it was in the program guide. And before she went up on stage, they made specific points to say, you are not allowed to take pictures. You are not allowed to take video. This is part of the requirements for her coming here. So please don't do it. And people were still doing it. But the reason why she didn't want it done was she didn't want people taking a snippet of a conversation and showing it out of context. Or a picture where maybe she's in a bad position, or her mouth is open and it looks unusual or funny or silly. She was that adamant about it because there are people for her who are going out there and doing stuff like that to her. They've done it.
I know.
And
through mutual friends, I heard more of an inside story about someone that was very, very huge, is a huge star, and definitely in her prime in the movie industry. It was pre-social media, and she was vigilant about, was it vigilant or vigilant? Anyway, I get those two mixed up, but she was determined, how's that, about press signing releases, about if kids came to her birthday party with their parents, or birthday party of her kids and their parents were there, that she was there with her assistant saying, you may not take photos, da, da, da. And this ticked people off that were there. But when we go, fast forward 10, 15, 20 years into this era, now people are going, wow, she was smart and ahead of her time.
Yeah. There's actually been, and again, I'm going to go back to France here for a second. They actually have passed a law in France that says that parents are not allowed to post pictures of their children without the child's permission.
Oh, wow. I'm moving to
France. Because it is embarrassing to the children,
right,
to have these pictures posted in some cases. So that, maybe you're 5 years old now and there's pictures of you, and you're doing something crazy, or maybe even when you're an infant. I mean, how many of us have not taken a picture maybe of our child as an infant getting their first bath?
Oh yeah.
And then you want to post that, but it's like, hey, you've just posted a picture of a naked child. That's child pornography.
Right.
Or to the child though, it's embarrassing.
Right.
Especially when Facebook comes up and says, hey, here's a memory from 20 years ago on this date, and you post that picture again.
Right.
And now your kid's in high school and you've just posted a picture of when they were an infant. So, everything comes back to haunt us.
I know.
It has the potential anyway.
let's close this on something then. And I know maybe this is a different conversation that you're used to, but I really wanted to get, well, obviously not, you talk about these things, but we didn't get into, the brass tacks of safety, did I? Really wanted to go more on what happens in the emotional side of it. So how do you see us keeping a handle on, or at least trying to understand the way to navigate conversations with people? This is going to happen. It does happen. It's awful. Feel awful about it because it's awful. And you have to disengage from it and know that it's just going to be out there. And there's not much that there's not anything physical you can do to remove it. The work that needs to be done regarding removing it from your life is removing your attention from it.
Right. Well, here's the part about that. I mean, I've always said, since social media came out, if there's one person that you don't want to see something, you have to assume that they will eventually see it. Just to understand that, accept it. If you're lucky, it won't happen. But you have to be prepared for the fact that if you post something out there, it may be seen by the person you never wanted it to see. And as you said earlier, I come from a marketing background. And in the marketing background, we have what we call the 4 Ps of marketing. Well, I've turned that into the 4 Ps of social media, which is there's 4 Ps that you have to be careful about what you post and if these people see it. The first P is your parents. If you post something, how would you feel if your parents saw it? The second would be your principal, or maybe an employer if you're an adult. How would you feel if your employer saw something? There was a scandal this week, if you will, a news story about the woman from Panera who posted how their mac and cheese was made, and Panera fired her reportedly for making this post. Well, what did she think Panera was going to do by posting a picture like this? Did they think she was going to reward her and give her a raise? The third is the police. How would you feel about whether or not the police saw what you did? And then the fourth P is a predator. How would you feel if a predator saw what you had posted, whether it was a racy picture or in some cases not even a racy picture? There's a great video online on YouTube. It was created by a police department down in Georgia, and it's called Everyone Knows Sarah. And it is a great video. It's still probably the best one about being careful about what you post online and what can happen when people see it.
Exactly. Yes. And I want to say this too, because I hear this certainly, and I'm probably guilty of it too, although I really try not to be now, especially with the number of students that we work with, people under 18, is we really have no idea what it is that they have to deal with. Those of us.
No, we don't.
We just don't. Like I cannot, I know it from now I'm an adult having to deal with it, but I can't even fathom with all the other stuff that I was going through as a kid to also have to deal with someone that might stick a camera under a bathroom stall while I'm peeing and then put that out. I mean, and that is the stuff that goes on. And the only way I can sort of understand it is now we've started to move into doing some film work, and I don't know whether I'm going to stay in it or not. And it's funny, I'll make these decisions and then I'll get like a truckload of really well-connected, known people that want to help me do this because they're excited about it. And I'm like with wild horses pulling a halt going, I don't know if I want to go in that direction because of that very reason. You're on a film set and I've had situations where I'm hosting a table of people and there are multiple cameras and the director is doing all kinds of cuckoo stuff to get me to control the table, and it's making my face contorted, right? I know that in order to make a good film out of it, they're not going to really want to use any of the footage of me looking at the director going, what? They're going to use footage during that time of the other people talking. But you get a jerk, you get someone with an axe to grind, you get someone on the film crew with their phone cam on, and they will do interesting things with that stuff. And the legal battle to get through it, which I will fight, is a nightmare.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And part of that is, as you asked about, like, what do children, what do adults even need to do, is they need to realize that a lot of it is, as you say, people who sneak pictures when you're not looking, whether you're in a bathroom stall or whatever, but a lot of it is also what we ourselves post.
Yes.
So we have to be careful about what we post. We have to be careful of our privacy settings on our social media apps. I just saw a story this week that said 40% of teenagers don't use their privacy settings at all on any of their social media sites, which means that everything that they post is available to everyone else that's out there.
Right.
They probably don't want that. They have to be, even if they do use their privacy settings, they have to realize that if they post their privacy settings, their friends, their connections, their followers, whatever it is, they can see it. And everyone focuses on your privacy settings and saying you need to keep certain people out. And that's true. But you also have to remember, who did you let in? Because it only takes one person that you let in to in turn reshare it, retweet it, repost it, and then it's out there and it's no longer under your privacy settings. It's under their privacy settings.
Right.
So,
Good point.
maybe, and if they're one of those 40% that don't use privacy settings, then the picture you posted of yourself playing a drinking game at a party that you're thinking, oh, my parents can't see this because my privacy settings, but your best friend shares it. Oh, and they see it on their page because they don't have privacy settings. Any of these things are out there. So you have to be careful of who you let in. And then you also have to speak with your friends and say, look, before you post something, reshare something, ask me first or check with me to make sure that I'm okay with it. Because once it's out, the genie's out and it's done. It's out of the bottle.
Right, exactly. And what a great practice for boundaries in this ever increasingly boundaryless society we live in.
Yeah. I mean, and you just said it, there's no boundaries in some cases. The stuff just, once it's out there, you're never putting it back in the bottle. It's impossible because someone can take a screenshot and then save it. The old saying with Snapchat when it started was, oh, well, if I send a snap to somebody, it's only visible for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and then it's destroyed forever. Well, first off, Snapchat got busted by the federal government because they found out that wasn't true, and all the snaps were staying on their servers forever. So they took an incredible fine. I forget what the fine was, but at the time it was the biggest fine ever given to a company by the federal government for this. And then they also said, you will now subject yourself to 20 years of federal oversight, that if we come knocking on your door and say we want in, you have to let us in and inspect your servers. But even if that's not the case, even if it's not on the servers, which in many cases it will be, they can take screenshots, they can save it, they can do anything they can possibly can. So that even if it was 100% removed from the internet, maybe a picture of someone's daughter got out and it was topless. And they're like, oh my God, we need to get this out. Fine. By some miracle, you're able to remove it from every instance of the web, except for the fact that some people took screenshots and saved it to their phone, saved it to their hard drive, and now they're going to put it back out there. So it's not going to stay gone.
Yep. I know it makes me want to live more and more in a cave.
Well, there was a great article, and it was from I think it was from Your Teen magazine, and it was about a mom who wrote in, and she said she found out that I think she said her daughter was 16, I think she was, and she went out with friends and they went swimming at a swimming hole. And it was also some sort of photography shoot. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, she found out that there are pictures of her daughter topless at this event. And she went to her daughter and said, are you crazy? And the daughter's like, Mom, it's no big deal. Everyone does it.
Yep.
So the mom's trying to convince the daughter that a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, you may not want this.
Yep. I know. I just saw one. I just watched this great rendition of Little Women that's on Amazon, and Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter. I was watching the young woman who's playing Jo Marsh, the pivotal, obviously, character. And I'm like, God, she reminds me of another actress. She is tremendous. And then, of course, Uma Thurman looks like her, sounds like her, everything. And so I go and I Google her. I want to see what other things she's been in. What a wonderful young, talent. And there's a video that just went out on her Instagram where she's walking around naked, says on it that she's drunk, She's covered in like a jacket that she's barely holding together, and she's walking around, doing what drunk teen, elder teen girls or early 20 girls can do sometimes. And in that world of celebrity and how people get famous and whatever, maybe that's the way to go. I don't know, but it did make me stop and go, okay, I'm not making a comment on that person. I'm sure she's a lovely, lovely young woman, but it did make me take less seriously wanting to see other films. And it made me think back in the days of when we didn't know every teensy ounce or every ounce of personal life about someone that we're watching. The mystery of they can just be that character that we see in all these different films. There's something to be said for, not knowing everything about their personal life.
Right.
And that's not the way that it is today.
Well, there's a video that I show when I'm speaking to people about this, and it's a picture it starts off with this young girl who, supposedly, I guess, posted a picture of herself, and it's making the rounds. It's being shared, retweeted, whatever you want to call it. And the first person that opens up the phone is a high school boy. And what happened was she sent it to her boyfriend. She sent the picture to her boyfriend. Her boyfriend looks at the picture and he's smiling because his girlfriend just sent him an intimate picture, but he's with his buddies, and his buddies grab the phone and he's like, "Oh, I'm sending this to myself." And then he in turn shares it out, and through next round of it being shared, you see it being shared by other girls in the same high school, and they're giggling over it because they think it's a silly post. And then you see a boy post who opens up his cell phone, and he opens up his cell phone and he sort of cringes at it a little bit. And I always say, for all you know, that could be the girl's younger brother, and he's just seen his sister topless.
Right.
And then it shows another picture of a soccer mom, and her pops up on her laptop, and she opens it, and she's really cringing. And I'm like, for all you know, that could be her mother.
Right.
And then it goes to one more picture, and it's a middle-aged man, and he opens up the picture, and he doesn't cringe. He's got like a really leery grin on his face.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, chances are that's not her father.
Good visual. Yeah.
And everyone just sort of cringes at it. Yeah. And that's how quickly these things can happen. And here's the thing that people need to realize. If one person sends it to just one other person, that's it. So now we've doubled it. We've gone from one person that has it to two people that have it. Now, in reality, we know that they're probably going to send it to everybody in their address book. So that could be dozens, if not hundreds of people.
Right.
But if we're going to be the most conservative we possibly can be, we're going to say that went from one person to two people. And then we're going to say maybe those two people send it to just one other person as well. We've gone from 2 people to 4 people. Those 4 people do it in turn. In only about a dozen cycles, it's seen by over 500 people.
Right.
And that's not necessarily witnessed in days or hours. It could be minutes that could happen.
Yeah. Seconds.
Seconds even, yeah. And that's assuming that we did the most conservative estimate we could possibly do, which is they only shared it with one other person. If they send it to 20 people at a time, and those 20 people send it to 20 people, there's 400 people in only 2 cycles.
Yeah, we need an anonymous group for, like an AA type group for oversharers, that it's already been done. You already did it. And here's the group that you can come, and no one's going to shame you.
Well, there are support groups, not necessarily of that nature, but for people who have been the victim of it. One of them is Darkness to Light. It's also a group that I've been trained by for their stewards of children. And, they treat child pornography like this, of sharing tweets. They treat this as sexual child abuse. Yeah. And they're right.
Good. Absolutely. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for coming on. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you.
Well, you can look me up on my website, which is Yeager, Yeager.net. You can find out about me there, or you can look for Safety Net of PA, either on Facebook or Twitter. And either of those, you can find stuff. And I put out, especially on the Facebook page, I put out tips every day with ideas to help people to keep them safe and such. So those are probably the best places to try and find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for coming on the show and for all of the work that you're doing also with Jazz and FSP Against Bullying.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health News Radio.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it.
Good boy.